Hello everyone, Rajwal here. So in this video, I am going to basically try to decode or demystify how a system, how a platform like LeetCode basically works. So I will basically try to guess the architecture of platform like LeetCode, and in next subsequent videos, I will basically build build our own online judge from scratch. So you may heard about platforms like LeetCode, Chef, or Forces. All these platforms basically conduct coding competitions, and you can come there and practice coding problems. So suppose I open the LeetCode. On the left hand side there is a problem statement written to some. They have written some problem statement. They have given some examples input and example output. Also on the right hand side they have basically integrated a code editor, and they have exposed a function here, right? Now we can see that they basically provide multiple languages like C++, Java, Python, Python 3, C, JavaScript, right? Now if you can see that they haven't uh, wrote the uh, directive part, like has include bits C++ dot h, right? They have just exposed the function part, and by somehow they are trying to run this function like on the browser or maybe on the server. Now the first question is, are they running the function on the browser side or on the server side? So you must know that a program like C++, we cannot run C++ language on the browser, right? There are some way to run the C++ program on the browser, but conventionally we can't run. So I am supposing that they must be running this function on the backend server, right? So suppose uh, I am building a function. Suppose I am building a function like function multiply, and putting two arguments, int a, int b, and as a user, your task is to basically solve the problem, giving some test cases also, like first test case is 1 comma 2, output should be 3, right? And second test case is 2 comma 4, output should be 8. Third test case is 3 comma 4, output should be 12. Now there may be uh, there must be some user that will write a logic as return 0, like, and there must be some user that will going to write correct logic like return a into b, right? So what may be happening is that that particular function with the whole code snippet is forwarding to the backend, and that backend is forwarding to the backend, and that backend must be uh, must be written in that way, like hash include bits dot h, and then there must be some uh, portion for the user written function, and that user function getting called and running on all test cases, right? They must be running in this particular way. So so as a as a creator of the backend, or creator of the online page, what we have to do, we have to basically store the problem statement of the question, the input test case, output test case, bo- boilerplate supported for multiple languages, and yeah, boilerplate, and yeah, so these things should be uh, stored somewhere, right? Maybe in database, or maybe in file system, or maybe in Google Cloud storage. Maybe we can basically store all these things. So yeah. So what may be happening that this particular user code is sending to the our backend server, and that backend server running the user code on their test cases, and the user's response is getting matched with the corresponding uh, corresponding output of the particular test case. And if it match, that particular test case is correct, and if it doesn't match, that particular test case may be wrong. That in that sense, maybe the lead code like platforms were executing the function, right? So let's try to basically create the architecture of this system, how we can basically create our online page. So suppose there is a user browser, and he opened some problem like uh, multiplying two numbers, and after basically clicking on the submit button, that his whole solution is sending to the database, sending to the backend server, suppose. And that backend server like maybe executing the solution of that. But do you know that we can't directly execute like some other user written code uh, in our server, because it is not like that safe. Like it may be a malicious code, it may be some uh, shady code, or some corrupted code which may hijack our system. We can't directly run that solution in our server directly. So there is a concept called sandboxing. So what sandboxing is, that it is basically an environment which basically takes some RAM, takes some memory, some GPU, and it basically runs the uh, code in a more secure environment. So we can create our own sandbox, but that is not a easy task to create our sandbox. So there is a system called there is a third party tool like Jet0, which we can use for the sandboxing purpose. So yeah, so what we can do that user send the solution to the backend server, we can basically like forward it to the Jet0. That Jet0 will basically evaluate the solution and will respond with the uh, our backend server. So in this way, the solution is forward to the backend server, and then backend server forward to the Jet0, and that Jet0 will basically respond with the solution to the um, backend server, and that backend server will basically update in the database. So suppose multiple user came, like in a contest on code forces, you can see that thousands of people basically participate. So user one, user two browser, and all those browsers basically come and they hit the backend server. So since we know that running a program is an expensive operation, it is not like very of one kind of it is not expensive. So running those expensive uh, operations, we can't directly overload our backend server with thousands of requests simultaneously. So what we can do, we can basically introduce a queue uh, before uh, before evaluating the solution. So what we can do, we can, if the user basically if thousand user come and submit their solution, we can basically push the solution in a queue. So what we can do, then we can create a queue here. We can push in a directly in a queue. Suppose thousand submissions hit the backend server simultaneously, then all the thousand submissions will be pushed into the queue, and the solution will be pulled from the uh, pulled from the judge one by one in order to execute them. So for scaling in this way. So for scaling the whole architecture, what we can do, we can basically introduce multiple instances of the judge. Suppose we can introduce four instances like in this way. In this way. So what will happen then multiple instances of judge will pull the submissions of the uh, and will try to evaluate the solution, right? So the next question is that suppose like in our the multiply problem. So suppose a user basically send the solution like a into b, then that particular a into b will be passed to the backend server, then it will be pushed into the queue, and second user came, and he again passes the uh, solution. Suppose return he wrote the code and return zero, then that return zero will be passed to the server, then it will go, and then our judge zero will basically pull the submissions from the queue and evaluate the solutions. Now after evaluating, it must be uh, responding with whether the solution is right or wrong, right? So responding the solution right or wrong, it need to basically update to our database, right? But since the Jet Zero is a third party tool, it can't directly update our database, right, which is connected to our backend server. So how can it be communicated to the our database? There must be some solution, right, to communicate to the our personal database or the backend server database. For this, what we can do, we can basically take the help of webhook. There is a concept called webhook, through which third party uh, service can communicate to our backend server. So what will happen that that jet zero will basically evaluate the solution and after evaluating the solution, it will respond with the response that whether this particular solution is right or wrong. So for responding right or wrong, what we can do, we can basically with the help of a webhook, we can basically uh, send a request to the backend server from just zero, and that webhook will basically contain the data that for that particular submission ID, whether the solution is right or wrong. So what we can do, we can basically create a separate backend server 2, which will basically get hit from the judges in this way. In this way, and that backend server will basically uh, up, update with the response of the judge to the database corresponding to that submission ID. So yeah, so in this way, we can basically update the final response into our database from the judge. So now the uh, next question is, okay, it get updated in the database. Now how we can how the user sitting in the browser will know the what is the solution of his whether his solution is right or wrong. So there are some ways. One is with the help of web sockets. With the help of web socket, what we can do, we can basically like uh, emit the event to the user that his whether uh, after getting the update in the database, we can basically hit the push the event to the user whether the solution is right or wrong. Or another way is long polling. What long polling means, that that particular user will basically will be hitting our server at a specific interval of time, and will our backend server will basically uh, hitting the database and try to see what is the uh, result of the evaluation. So if the backend server get the evaluated result, then on that on some particular hit from user, he will basically it will basically respond with the solution, with the evaluation result, whether the user solution is right or wrong. So in this particular way, we can basically uh, create the our online judge. Now the now another question is that, okay, we have created the like basic architecture uh, of the of the online judge. Now uh, what basically happens that uh, there are thousands of test cases. If you have ever solved problems on code forces or like lead code or some other platform, there are thousands of test cases that they basically like run on a user solution. So all those thousand test cases, suppose there must be some question that contains the array, and in their test case that array contains a 5 10 to the power 5 elements. That elements, that huge array must be getting saved somewhere, right? In maybe in a file system, maybe in the database, or maybe in the GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So what we can do, we can basically uh, use a file system for that, for creating the huge test cases and huge output of the test cases. So we can basically use a file like .txt file, or we may use GCP. So we will basically see this whether we should use a GCP or we should use a file system. So in the next in the next coming videos, I will basically start implementing the online judge, and we can basically see that how we can basically build, how we can basically like save the test cases, and whole building the whole architecture in the Node.js and with the help of Next.js. So in next coming sections, what I will do, I will basically use Next.js as a frontend for our online judge, and Node.js TypeScript backend for backend, and Jet0 for sandboxing. So stay tuned with, with me, and thanks much to everyone. I will be soon uploading the next videos in the upcoming sessions. So thank you everyone.